What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our course breakdown for this week's RSM Classic. Gonna get you ready for all of your exposure with a complete breakdown of the venue this week, which we have two there with the Sea Island Resort. We got the Seaside course, the Plantation course, the Seaside, gonna be the main one for 3 of the 4 rounds. Gonna go over what to expect from the golf courses this week, a whole breakdown of the Seaside track, and also my key stats and comp courses that I'm using to identify my top plays. So by the end, you'll be an expert on what to expect this week, what to look for in some of your top plays, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. The main course, the Seaside course, is a short par 70, so just over 7,000 yards, 7,005 to be exact. And just like last week, we have Bermuda grass from tip to toe. So Port Royal Golf Club, I think, is a pretty good comp course to what we get at Seaside. Much more about your accuracy off the tee than it is about your distance. But unlike Port Royal, where we had 40-mile-an-hour winds for 3 of the 4 rounds, it should be a lot calmer this time, or at least fingers crossed that we get something that's a little bit more typical. Although it went pretty good for our exposure. We had a lot of guys in the top 5, top 10 that were core plays. Vince Whaley almost won Kanaya with the top 5 and all of that, but a little bit less chaos this time around. But we got Bermuda greens, Bermuda rough. It is about 2 inches long, and the greens are about averagely sized. They're 7,200 square foot on average, which is just about the PGA Tour average right there. 14 water hazards in play, so there are some doubles that can come in, but because it is a layup golf course, you're not going to have a bunch of doubles and triples. So it's in play on 13 of the 18 holes, something that you have to stay on top of, which is pretty similar to a lot of the Florida golf courses. And although this is in Georgia, it's pretty close to the Sunshine State and shares a lot of characteristics with what we get down here. It's a Tom Fazio redesign. First was a Harry Colt and Charles Allison design in 1929, but it is a much different golf course now. So a lot of those Fazio things that we see at a lot of his tracks, you'll see at the Seaside course as well. And then on the other side, we have the Plantation course, which is the easier of the two, and it is a par 72 setup, so about the same length at only 7,060 yards. Also Bermuda grass from tip to toe, but because it's shorter, because you have some extra par 5s to attack, we get some -7s, -8s at the Plantation course. So they're going to play it on one of the first 2 days. You have a full 156 player field here, so we need the 2 golf courses to accommodate that. Saturday, Sunday, they'll be back at the Seaside course, but I would say of the 4 rounds, this is your most important of the 4 because you got to go out there and score. Just like we have at Seaside, there is a bunch of water in play as well. In fact, there are 10 water hazards, and water's in play on 10 of the 18 holes. The greens are a bit smaller at about 6,000 square foot, but we have some drivable par 4s over there, the extra par 5s I was mentioning, and bombers tend to do really well at the Plantation course. So that's a Davis Love redesign. It was extremely different after that in 2019. It was harder the first time out, maybe with the firmer and faster greens, but it has played extremely easy over the last couple years. So for showdown in rounds 1 through 2, you'll definitely want to be targeting guys on the Plantation course. But our main focus is going to be on Seaside just for the main event and handicapping it as a whole, because 3/4 of our modeling is going to be for the Seaside. So we have some of the averages there because the ShotLink data is also available from Seaside, but won't be there for the Plantation side. So all these averages that we're going through will be for the golf course with ShotLink data, which is the main one this week. So fairway average over the last 3 years here has been 67.5%. That's almost 8% higher than what we have for the PGA Tour average. So because it's a layup course, only about 7,000 yards, people are going to hit a little bit more fairways. Your green regulation average also higher than usual. It's easier than normal golf course. It does play under par most years. A few years ago when it was super cold and windy, it played around even or even over par for a few rounds. But then you had the Love to Go Bear year when he won at -29 when they nuked it at like -2 to -3 every single day. So there's a pretty wide range of scores that we can see here. If it's cold, rainy, and windy, it plays over par. If it's got perfect nutted conditions with lift clean in place, like we had with the O'Bear year, as easy as -3 to even a -4 scoring average. But the ball striking in most rounds is going to be easier than average. Scrambling rate about PGA Tour average there, so not much of a difference there compared to what we see most weeks. 3-putt percentage a little bit lower than your PGA Tour average, and relatively large greens. So that's because there's not as much slope on these greens compared to what some of the other golf courses have on the schedule. Birdie average a little bit higher than normal. Bogey average a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing. In fact, the birdie average is only about 0.21 higher than what we have most weeks, whereas the bogey average is almost a whole 0.6 difference from the PGA Tour average to this week. So you're not going to see a lot of mistakes. Some of those mistakes will be double bogeys though, because as we mentioned earlier, there are, 13 holes with water in play. So not something that you can sleep on, and not really included with these stats here. If we take a look at the Bomber's Paradise, it does rank a 7.1 out of 10. That does include the plantation stats though. So I would say the Seaside course is a lot more about your accuracy. The approach distribution though is what I really want to focus in on here. And you can see of your 18 approach shots, about 9.5 of them come from that 125 to 175 range. So that's about half of the bag, focusing on just a 50-yard bucket there. So when we add our key stats later and we go through what we're looking for in approach, you're going to see a lot of extra emphasis from 125 to 175 in the bet the number model. Around the green, it's a good mix. You've got rough, fringe, bunkers, natural areas, pretty much every kind of surface you could possibly imagine. And your putting distribution is a little bit higher than your PGA Tour average from 10 to 20 feet, which will be included in the bet the number modeling when we get to that here in just a bit. But because you see a few more putts made from 10 to 20 feet, that can be a key separator for your field as well. Going on to the hole by hole analysis, let's show you what we have at the Seaside course. Hole number 1 being a short par 4. So it is extremely narrow down there. So accuracy does pay at the Seaside course. A lot of your bombers though will just choose to take a little bit less than driver and not push it down there to really where it starts to constrict down. I usually stand over here to the left under these trees. I've been here for the last 5 years. I've played both of these golf courses, and when I play this, I normally end up over there as well. So I don't know if there's a magnet over there, both for watching it and for playing it, but this is a harder than average starting hole. I know it looks pretty non-intimidating at only 420 yards, but the green's pretty small. It is an elevated green with a lot of drop-offs around it, and depending on where they tuck the flag, if it's a center pin, it would be the easiest hole on the golf course, bar none, but they never put it at the center of the screen. It's normally right next to one of those little chipping hollows, and I've seen people make double at this hole because they chip it right back to their feet. Next up, we have 2, which is 399. This is also a less than driver hole. I mean, if you were a psycho, maybe you'd take driver and try and hit it a little bit further down, but there's no incentive. In fact, it might actually be a harder shot to hit from 50, 60 yards as opposed to closer to a full wedge from 100 to 110. So people will do the prudent thing here, especially with the water to the right side. Just lay up to a number, then try and attack with their irons. Hole 3 is 214 yards. This is oftentimes shortened up, particularly on windier days. It's a small green, also a long iron shot, so not one you can sleep on, but this is also extremely pin dependent. There are some pins that are in low spots that'll play half a stroke, even a quarter stroke under par, and then some that are extremely difficult on crests that can play a half a stroke over par. Next up, we have 4, which is 435, another layup hole, and Aubert did try and take this on when it was playing downwind a couple years ago, so it is potentially drivable depending on the wind direction, but that's an extremely risky prospect, as not only do you have to carry water, but there's water over the back of the green as well. 5 is 410. This is also another hole that you could hit driver on and be a little bit more aggressive. It all depends on the direction that the wind's going. If you get a favorable wind for both of these holes, the scoring average tends to be a little bit lower on days like that compared to what we have elsewhere. 6 is 180 yards. This is a mid-length par 3 for this golf course, and they almost all have the same kind of shape to them as well. It's kind of unique there at the Seaside course. Hole 7 is 557. This is a reachable par 4. You do have water in play on both sides of this fairway though, so it is extremely intimidating from that aspect. Hole 8 is 373, one of the more positional and easier par 4s that we have on the front side. Almost everyone, I don't think I've even seen people take driver at this hole unless they move up the tee box, just because it's an uphill second shot, and it's pretty tricky, especially if you're coming in from 50 to 60 yards. People have a lot more success at this hole. There's also a lot of slope from back to front, so you can hit a wedge and spin it back to hole locations. People have a lot more success doing that at hole 8. Hole 9 is 454. This is a slightly longer par 4, at least for this golf course. Water down the right side, slightly intimidating. You're going to see a lot of people in that bunker to the left. In fact, when I play this course, that's always where I end up because I have a slice off the tee, so I want to avoid that water at all costs. It is a relatively straightforward hole though. Back left pin location is when it gets a little tough, but all the other pins will play even to even a little bit under par. Hole 10 is 418, so starting on this side of the golf course is, I think, a little bit harder than the front. Neither side's easy though. It's not really a handshake whether you're starting on 1 or 10. This one is 420 though. It is a mid-iron shot at most, and if you lay up off the tee, probably closer to a pitching wedge if you're hitting a driver. Next up is 11, which is 424. This is also another mid-length par 4, almost the same distance as the last hole, and and almost the same exact setup, so not much we have to mention there. 12 is 222, another long par 3. You always have that one bunker on these par 3s, and then almost the same shape green at all the par 3s here. So it's maybe not as much diversity as what we'd hope for, but they're all pretty straightforward. 13 is 410. It is another short, easy par 4. You do have the water down the left side, and the bunkers will get a lot of action to the right because people want to avoid that. 14, you have the water down the left side, so a lot of people will hit it to the right here. Unfortunately, though, you have this massive tree, which doesn't look that big from the overhead view, but trust me, it is well in play, even for these tour players, because it's a lot taller than it looks like there. 15 is 564. This is probably the easiest hole in the Seaside course, well reachable for the entire field. In fact, your longer players can take a more aggressive line towards my cursor and have something like 180, maybe 170 yards into the green. Maybe like 200. Maybe that's slightly exaggerating, but if it's playing downwind, they can get to that kind of number. 16's 404 yards. This tee shot's a lot harder than it looks. There's a reason why they have the marker over here towards the right side, because to the left, if it's playing into the wind whatsoever, and it typically does, normally the trade wind is coming like from the top right towards the bottom left corner here. If that's the case, you're going to see people hit it in the water all day. So I'll sit at 16 because the approach shot, the green does slope from back to front. If you hit the fairway, it's a very attackable hole, but also very hard because over the back, you have this chipping hollow. It's an extremely steep drop off of the back, and you'll see some doubles there too. So a wide range of scores at 16. The birdies when you execute and you hit the fairway, and then doubles are worse, of course, when you miss the fairway at 16. 17's 193 yards. This one has 2 bunkers on it, but once again, the same shape green. It's just like all that oblong little oval that they've got going. It's a little bit harder than some of the other ones too, because you can see that there's chipping hollows all around this green. The 2 bunkers are the only spot where you don't have that, but over the back right, it repels away. Over the back left, it repels away. And then of course, if you miss short, it comes back a little bit too. And then 18 has an awkward tee shot. It is quote unquote 471. It plays a lot shorter though, because you're going to get some extra rollout in the fairway. A lot of players coming down to this downslope or even past the little bit of a cart path that you have running through it. It's a hard shot if you miss the fairway, though, because if you miss the fairway in one of these bunkers, you don't get the extra rollout, and it plays the true 470 yards. And then you have water in a natural area to the right. So you'll see some people miss to the left, whether it's in the rough. The downslope over here can be a problematic shot into the green. There's not usually a ton of drama because it is a wide landing area. I mean, it's like 40, 50 yards wide. I believe the widest fairway that you have at the entire golf course. Outside of the par 5s, those are the angled fairways at the par 5s. They're wider than 50 yards. But in terms of the par 4s, this is as easy as it gets off the tee. And then the green has a lot of slope to it. So you can kind of see the runoff areas to the right side, to the back left as well. Back left pin is the hardest pin that you get here at 18. But the front pins might look easy on paper, but they're really hard too because of this runoff area. So the golf course isn't one that you could sleep on. Off the tee and ball striking wise, it is a bit easier. But on and around the greens in particular, there are some difficult golf shots that you can run into. So with our modeling this week, it is going to be relatively balanced, but there are some things that we can look for in particular at this golf course. First off, shots gained off the tee and shots gained approach. This is the bet the number model that we're going through here together. Just trying to take a look at some of the players with the best form heading in. So guys that are hitting the ball the best. Some of them haven't played in quite a while, like a Jake Knapp. Some of the other guys like Harris English, Brian Harmon haven't played as much on the PGA Tour side. But for the guys that have been playing during the fall, it'll be good to see some shots gained off the tee and some shots gained approach. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these because it's just regular form. We're always looking at this regardless of what golf course we're handicapping, but you can see some of the poppers in either category right there. But approach from 120 to 180 yards is something that Bet the Number is really trying to dial in on, and that's because of the plethora of shots that you have in that range. Over half of your shots coming from 125 to 175 is why we want to add some extra emphasis there. So some of the best players in that range would be a Doc Redman. He's a small sample size guy that hasn't played that much on tour, but still notable that he's been really good there when we've seen him. Arico Hoey, somebody that plays a lot more regularly. Valdez, another small sample size guy, but a Davis Thompson, a Skins, a Rosenmuller, a Wallace, a Dylan Wu, a Kiefer, a Clanton, players we've seen a lot more on the PGA Tour and guys that we can rely on in this category with a little bit more confidence. But if you add in this approach from 120 to 180 yards with some Bermuda grass putting, that of course is the surface of the week, those are going to be some of my personal poppers. And this is the bet the number model. It will differ a little bit from what I'm doing myself. I'm a little bit heavier on the Bermuda grass putting. They don't have that in their main modeling for this week. Just regular shots gained putting over here is important to look at as well, and will be something that I'm including in my modeling later on. Some of the best putting form players you guys can see right there, but I would say don't forget about adding some Bermuda grass stuff on top of it. Grainy Bermuda, like we get at the RSM Classic, is something that takes a lot of skill to putt on. Around the green, you can't ignore either. There have been some fall series events, especially some of the easier ones, one at like minus 25 to minus 30. That can happen with lift, clean, and place at this course, also with very calm conditions. But we'll have to see what the forecast looks closer to lock. Most years, around the green is something that we have to consider around here. But just like the off the tee and on approach, we're not going to focus on this category as much because we're looking at this at most golf courses on tour. Most databases are going to have that. But let's look at some of the more interesting key stats here, like putting from 10 to 20 feet. 10 to 20 feet has been a separator at this golf course, so why not try to focus on players that have done well in that range? So a Takumi Kanaya really stands out, a Michael Brennan, who was a winner from a few starts ago, a Matt Wallace showing up in yet another category, a Brendan Todd who's had a lot of success at this golf course historically. All of these guys heavily into the dark green, especially if they can pair that up with a few of the other categories we went through, are players that are going to be in the top 20 of the BTN model. And then lastly, we've got birdie or better percentage on here too, especially if it's going to be an easier year with the scoring conditions. There's going to be a ton of birdies with all the short par fours. That's something that you want to incorporate. And in particular, if you're playing DFS, if you guys are playing in the large field GPPs, Draftkings scoring is directly correlated to the amount of birdies that you're posting, not just for Showdown, but also for main slate. Placement is obviously a portion of it. You also have birdie streaks, bogey-free rounds. I mean, that's what's adding on top of it. But if you look at your raw score at the end of the week, the biggest category that's contributing to your score is going to be your birdie production. So trying to focus on these players is always a very good thing to do from that aspect, but also at Birdie Fest like this from the betting standpoint. And then in terms of comps, I've got three that really stand out. First off is going to be the Bermuda Championship, so where we were just a few days ago. This year might not have been a great example of that because of how windy it was. It was truly a one-of-a-kind kind of year at the Bermuda Championship, that difficult of conditions. But if you go to the last 3 to 5 years and try and find some leaderboard crossover, I think that would make a whole lot of sense. The agronomy is the same. It is Bermuda grass from tip to toe at both golf courses. Relatively short, a lot of layups off the tee, so there are a lot of things that are very similar from track to track. Unfortunately, we don't have the shot link data to use from Bermuda, but we do have the leaderboards to use for that. We also have TPC Southwind, so that's the home of the FedEx St. Jude Championship. The only downside here is that it is a playoff event, so a lot of the guys that are playing in this event aren't necessarily playing in the playoffs. There are a few like English, some of your 9-10K players, we will have stuff to go through, but it's more so the types of players that have found success because it's another short par 70, Bermuda grass from tip to toe, slightly longer, in particular on the par 4s and some of the par 3s, but a lot of the same key stats that we're emphasizing there, like accuracy off the tee, approach from 125 to 175 yards, you're going to see at this sort of a golf course. In fact, if you go to the approach distribution, you can see almost half of your shots coming from that same kind of range. And to go back to Port Royal, actually we don't have the data from Port Royal, but if we did, it would be the same kind of story, even though it's a little bit shorter than some of these other golf courses, because of there's even more layups at Bermuda. That's a golf course that's even tighter than some of these other ones. It plays a little bit longer than that scorecard yardage. And the last one we have here would be Sedgefield Country Club, the home of the Wyndham Championship, another short par 70 with Bermuda grass from tip to toe. And you guessed it, the approach distribution is also heavily skewed from 125 to 175. Also not the biggest bomber's paradise, especially with the Seaside course being shorter than the Plantation side this week. So another golf tournament that you can use for that leaderboard crossover. So the thing that's beautiful about these last two is FedEx St. Jude that we do have shot link data for. Same thing with Sedgefield as well, so we can do a little bit more deep diving into those golf tournaments. But Bermuda is the week before on the schedule. A lot of guys that are playing at Bermuda play at this golf tournament as well. That adds a little bit of extra value there too. But a few different ways that you can get to some of your top plays this week. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the course breakdown. Go ahead, smash that like button if you haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That will include our DFS and betting preview dropping on a little bit later on tomorrow. Then I'll include my top DFS plays, core and value plays a little bit further down the board. Also some outright bets that I'll be mixing in as well. Some top 5 and top 10 placements. And all the content for Showdown and props throughout the weekend. We have live streams every Wednesday at 7 p.m. going over any of your last second questions before lock. That includes a weather report, some ownership, some also props and underdog and prize picks for round number 1. And then for rounds 2 through 4, we have Showdown and props once again covered for all of that on live streams as well. So subscribe so you guys don't miss any of that when it's going live. We've been doing this all during the fall swing as well. One of the few, if not the only website and channel on YouTube that's been dedicated to it this time of year. So if you're part of the Sweaty Tryhards, you're part of the crew that loves golf 24/7, this is the channel that you guys want to subscribe to. So check that out if you guys haven't already. Also comment down below what you've got is the winning score for this golf tournament. And if you end up guessing the correct score first, you'll win a free month access to everything I have on my Patreon, which is where I have all my DFS projections for DFS, also for all my outright bets. You guys can also get all the underdog and prize pick stuff that I'm posting as well, slips, all the research, all the stat averages, all the projected weather, all of that on that side of things, all for free if you guys give me that correct winning score first. So go ahead, claim your score before anyone else ends up stealing them from you. Also, best of luck with all the exposure that you're getting to, whether it's with the giveaway, whether it's in the large GPPs, or with any bets or props that you guys are entering. It's cash out, add to the bankroll, take advantage of what is the last full week of 2025, and let's gear up for 2026 next year.